What if the history we all learn is, well, missing one of its most epic chapters? I mean, just imagine a fleet so enormous, so technologically advanced, it could have completely changed the course of global exploration. Today, we're going to uncover the incredible story of an empire that reached for the entire world and then somehow just chose to forget.
So, get this. A full 80 years before Vasco da Gama even made it to India, this incredible Chinese navy, called the Treasure Fleet, already ruled the seas. We're talking from Southeast Asia all the way to East Africa. Between 1405 and 1433, the Ming Dynasty in China sent out 7 of these amazing voyages. And listen, this wasn't just a couple of ships exploring, oh no. This was an armada on a scale the world had literally never seen before.
Okay, let's talk size. The biggest ships, these legendary treasure ships, they were absolute behemoths. We're talking over 400 feet long. To give you some perspective, that's longer than an entire American football field, goalpost to goalpost. Just massive.
And it wasn't just 1 or 2 of these giants on a voyage. No way. This was a full-blown naval operation. A typical trip had over 300 vessels. You had everything. Supply ships, massive warships, quick little patrol boats, the whole shebang.
And what about the people on board? The crew was, well, it was a staggering force of over 28,000 people. You had your sailors and soldiers, of course, but also doctors, astrologers, translators. It was basically a floating city moving across the ocean.
But to really get a sense of the scale here, let's do a little comparison. Zheng He's treasure ship, right? Around 400 feet long. Now think about Christopher Columbus's flagship, the Santa Maria. It sailed almost a century later, and it was just 85 feet long. I mean, it's not even close. We're not just talking about a bigger fleet here. This was a completely different league of technology and ambition.
So yeah, this was, without a doubt, a totally unrivaled armada. It had these incredible innovations, things like watertight compartments and balanced rudders, stuff that wouldn't even show up in Europe for centuries. So the key takeaway here is that this fleet wasn't just big. It was, by far, the most advanced on the planet at the time.
Which, of course, leads to the question, who was the person capable of commanding a force like this? Well, at the helm of this incredible armada was the Admiral himself, a man named Zheng He.
And here he is, Admiral Zheng He. His personal story is, believe it or not, just as remarkable as the fleet he commanded. His background is really unique, and it's what gave him the skills and the Emperor's trust to take on such a monumental task.
I mean, Zheng He's life was a total roller coaster. He was born Ma He into a Muslim family, but as a boy, he was captured when the Ming army conquered his home province. He was castrated and forced to become a eunuch's servant. Now, eunuchs were this really unique class of officials who served the emperor directly, and they often held a ton of political power. And through sheer talent and loyalty, Zheng He became a prince's most trusted advisor. So when that prince seized the throne to become the Yangla emperor, guess who he put in charge of his brand new treasure fleet? His most loyal commander.
So you might be asking, what was the point of all this? This is a good question, because unlike the European voyages that came later, these missions weren't about conquering new lands or setting up colonies. This was all about projecting what we'd now call soft power. The goals were pretty clear. Show off China's military and economic might, set up peaceful trade and tribute relationships, and secure the trade routes by taking out pirates. And maybe the biggest reason of all, to legitimize the new emperor, the guy who, remember, had taken the throne by force.
Okay, so for 3 decades, this fleet was the undisputed king of the Indian Ocean. It projected Chinese power and influence all the way to the shores of Africa. And then, poof, it was gone. And this is the central mystery of our story. After 7 epic voyages, this unparalleled navy, the greatest the world had ever seen, it just disappeared. The shipyards went quiet, the official records were burned. I mean, why? Why would an empire just abandon such an incredible tool of global influence?
Well, the answer, as it so often is, comes down to politics. Back in the imperial court, there was this really powerful group, the Confucian scholar officials. And they looked at these expeditions and saw nothing but, and I'm quoting here, a meaningless waste of resources. For them, these voyages were just a big, expensive pet project of their political rivals, the court eunuchs, with Zheng He right at the top. And the results of this political infighting? Absolutely catastrophic for the fleet. The second the emperor who sponsored all these voyages died, his rivals jumped at their chance. They ordered the entire fleet to be dismantled. The massive ships were just left to rot, And then, and this is just an act of pure historical vandalism, they had the official logs and records of the voyages systematically destroyed.
And just like that, China turned inward. It completely abandoned its ambitions on the sea, basically handing over the world's oceans to anyone else who wanted them. And the timing here is just wow. This all went down just a few decades before the European Age of Discovery really kicked off. It's one of history's biggest what-ifs. But what if I told you this wasn't the first time this happened? That this whole pattern of incredible global reach, followed by a sudden, deliberate retreat, well, it actually has a precedent, way back in Chinese history.
Yeah, let's jump in the time machine and go way back, about 1,200 years before Zheng He. We're talking about the Han Dynasty, one of China's most powerful ever. They also went on this massive outward expansion, only this time they didn't go by sea, they went by land.
So, they were constantly dealing with these nomadic Xiongnu tribes to the north, and that conflict pushed the Han Dynasty, under a guy named Emperor Wu, to expand to the west. A diplomat named Zhang He went on these unbelievable journeys that basically opened up a whole new world. This is how the legendary Silk Road was born. It was this huge network of trade routes that stretched China's influence deep into Central Asia, connecting it with civilizations all the way in the Parthian Empire.
And yet, you can probably guess where this is going. Just like the Ming Dynasty more than 1,000 years later, the Han Dynasty's era of global engagement, it also came to an end. The empire turned its back on the very world it had worked so hard to connect. So why? Why did they both turn back? Well, the reasons are a little different, but just as fascinating. For the Ming Dynasty, like we saw, it was a very deliberate political choice. It was all about that court infighting. The scholar officials won the argument and the fleets got scrapped. Simple as that. For the Han, though, the retreat wasn't really a single decision. It was more of a total internal collapse. The empire just got eaten alive by its own problems. We're talking corruption, brutal power struggles, and finally, a massive civil war that just tore the whole country apart.
So think about that. Twice in its long history, China built the connections, the wealth, and the military power to be a truly dominant global force. First by land and then by sea, and twice it pulled back. Which leaves us with one of history's absolute greatest questions. What would our world even look like today if China had never turned inward?